Welcome back. We're going to shift the debate now to medical marijuana. 23 states in the District of Columbia allow for medical marijuana, including all three states in our region. New York just becoming the most recent at the end of the recent legislative session. And Ellen, I'm curious if your concerns about legalizing marijuana for recreational use also hold for medicinal use.
Yes, they do. And I have two concerns. One is because when we know that the states that have made medical marijuana available have the highest rates of youth marijuana use, but we also know that those states have the highest rates of marijuana abuse and addiction in adults.
Okay.
And the reason for that is when medical marijuana is permitted, there's a decrease in the perception of harm, and there's an increase in availability. So again, in Colorado, 70% of the people under the age of 25 who showed up for marijuana treatment, or treatment for their marijuana addiction, said that they got their marijuana primarily from a medical marijuana patient. So I'm very concerned that with medical marijuana being available, that young people will be able to get it in a much quicker, easier way, and so will adults.
Jill?
Well, it's not true that medical marijuana states have higher rates of youth use or higher rates of addiction. They actually have, it doesn't make a difference on youth use at all. So that's actually not true. In terms of young people getting marijuana from medical patients, young people get marijuana now really, really easily. And to not allow patients who can benefit from this medicine to have it, it's just wrong. I mean, there are so many people who need it, serious conditions, life-threatening conditions. They need that medicine. We shouldn't keep that medicine away from them any more than we would keep any other prescription medicine away from somebody that we don't want a young person to get a hold of.
The youth argument isn't just confined to medical marijuana. It's also about legalized marijuana. And I've heard a lot of talk that it's easier for kids to get marijuana in school these days than it is to get alcohol, because to buy alcohol you have to go to a store that could lose their license if they don't ask for ID. Do you think it would be just much easier for kids to get a hold of it?
Oh, it will be much easier. But the big difference and the big impact is the perception of risk. And let me just quickly give you a number. Between 1991 and 2013, the rates of usage for marijuana increased dramatically among 8th graders, 10th graders, and 12th graders, because at the same time the perception of harm decreased. Also, what Jill mentioned is simply not true. The facts very clearly, if you look at the studies that are in peer-reviewed journals, clearly the states that have medical marijuana have the highest rates of adult addiction and the highest rates of youth use.
I'm a little confused about addiction, because I've heard and I've read throughout this debate that marijuana is not physically addictive, that there is a risk of psychological dependency, but that it's not physically addictive in the sense that we consider other drug addiction to be. You clearly believe that there is an addictive aspect to it.
Well, let me clarify. Yeah. Let's take coffee and caffeine. If any of your viewers use coffee when they wake up in the morning, and instead of having their coffee right at 7 o'clock in the morning, they wait till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're incredibly irritable. They're having a much harder time concentrating. Is that physical?
That's
okay.
Me. That's
so is that physical addiction or is that psychological addiction?
It is physical addiction. You also get a really bad headache if you don't have your caffeine, if you are habituated to it. That is a physical addiction.
And the same is
there is
true
no
with
equivalent with marijuana.
Oh,
no, it is not true.
Absolutely.
There is no.
There's marijuana withdrawal syndrome. As a matter of fact, there's detox protocols now for marijuana in the addiction treatment clinics.
Jill?
It's just not true.
I'm listening to it's not true. And I strongly appreciate each of you on each side of this issue, because it's not, as you said, Andrew, it's not yelling and screaming, and I can follow your arguments and I can tell the passion that's there. But here's a question that I have. I'm strongly against legalizing marijuana. I'm not going to deal with that right now. But medical use of marijuana, you know, issues are important to us when we have a personal connection. So my son, who's now 22 years old, he has epilepsy, and there's seizure activity and so on. A lot of families, they're able to stop the seizures where kids are having them, you know, 10, 15, 20 seizures an hour. And so in some cases, the medical marijuana makes the seizures stop or go away. You're both against that still?
No, no. I approve of marijuana. Some of the ingredients in marijuana are very helpful for a number of conditions. And I totally support marijuana being prescribed by doctors who are the regular treaters of people with those conditions and distributed in pharmacies, not in pot shops. What other medicine do you buy that's not in a drugstore, quite frankly? I don't want, you know, Dr. Cheech or Dr. Chong, to use old names, to be the person to prescribe the marijuana for your son or for anybody else that's impaired. It should come from the neurologist or from the oncologist, the doctor that's treating
So
them.
you both
it should be regulated.
I mean,
Yes,
except that it would be nice if
absolutely
we could have it
support
in pharmacies, but the federal government has prevented that from happening because they put ideology over science, and they won't allow that
in
to
fact,
happen.
that's not true. A pharmacy can provide Marinol, it can provide Sativex, it can provide Epidiolex.
That was my next question. Very quickly, what about restricting medical marijuana just to the derivatives that are in pill form?
So there is what's called an entourage effect, and Dr. Sanjay Gupta has talked about this. And what that means is that you cannot isolate the compounds and get the same effect for some conditions. Okay, CBD is good for this or is good for this, but in most cases, there's what you call an entourage effect, which means that you need all the different compounds. There are many, many, many active compounds in the marijuana plant, and they all working together kind of synergistically are what create the medicinal effect.
I gotta leave it right there and take a break. We're gonna come back with some other marijuana issues you might not have considered before next.